Hi everyone. God, this is really daunting seeing so many faces on the screen. It's a bit like, thank you so much for coming along. And I've just seen in the chat that people are eating. Eat away, it's fine. You know, don't worry about it. There's no shame, it's lunchtime. So eat, drink. I think we've got somebody knitting, loving that. So do whatever you want to do. Everyone's welcome to make themselves comfortable. So my name's Laura Graham. And I am based in Northampton, which is also very grey today. So if I get a bit too dark at any point and you need me to turn a light on, just let me know. If you have any questions as we're going through, lovely Mo is going to be monitoring the chat. I'm going to be talking, so I'll be a bit distracted. But if you do have a burning question that you want to ask at any point, then please just chip in. I want this to be a fairly informal session. I'm going to be giving a lot of information and talking quite a lot. So yeah, please stop me. It'll give me a chance to have a sip of water, so you'll be doing me a favour. So I'm going to try and share my screen, hopefully. Let's see if this actually works, because I do have some slides to show you as we're going through, and also a couple of really super short videos. So I'm going to give it a whirl. Fingers crossed that the Zoom gods are kind to me. So share screen, hopefully. You should see my screen. Yay! Woo! Cool. So, ta-da! I have a little presentation. So if at any point it goes off or anything, just give me the nod. I can see Mo, so I'm going to monitor you. Yeah, good. Thumbs up. So today we're going to talk about the importance of spreading good news. I guess we couldn't be doing this Zoom session at a better time. We are in unprecedented times. We've heard that said many times. And with that obviously comes a lot of information that we are fed on a day-to-day basis about what's happening around us. And not all of it is positive, obviously, that's real life. So the point of this session isn't to pretend that the world is amazing and that nothing bad ever happens, because obviously it does. But what it is there to do is talk about balance, because I think that's the most important thing, and the key to spreading good news is just recognizing that actually as humans we all need to have balance in the information that we're consuming and also sharing. So as I mentioned, my name's Laura, and I am the founder of a community zine called The Happy Hood. Now, I will be telling you a bit more about what on earth that is, what a zine is, in a second. But we're going to hopefully play a really super short video. Let's see if it's going to play ball with me, just to give you a bit more information about what we are and what we're doing. No, it's not going to let me. Okay, so instead, backup plan. We're going to go direct to YouTube and play it from there. So you should be able to see YouTube now.
You have to stop. You have to stop your sharing of one thing and come out and then reshare.
Thank you. Thanks everyone. Right, let me try this again. Share my screen.
You can be a cruel mistress sometimes.
Oh, I mean, just when you think you're a pro, you're like, you're not. Let me try this. Yes. Okay. We have a blank screen at the moment. So my name's Laura Graham, and I'm the founder and editor of The Happy Hood, which is a quarterly good news magazine celebrating all the great things that happen in Northampton. We make sure that we turn a spotlight on the independent businesses, the community groups and the charities who are all working really hard to make Northampton a great place. I was sick of hearing the negative narrative about Northampton. All you hear about are shops closing, dirty streets, the council, just all the bad stuff. And what I realised was that there are loads of people who are working really hard to make the town fantastic, to bring people together and to do things that are positive. So I wanted to celebrate these people and maybe tell the stories that perhaps aren't always seen as newsworthy.
the biggest achievement is definitely helping people to see Northampton in a more positive light and bring people together who wouldn't have ever met each other before, and really start collaborations, and people working together and you know, making new projects and making new friends. And that was the point of it. It wasn't just about a printed magazine in isolation, it was about bringing people together and creating a community where there was none.
Cool. So, God, that's always really cringe seeing your own face and listening to your own voice. Ugh. Right, let's get back to the presentation then. Share screen. Yay! Oh my God, I'm just a pro at this now. Like, who knew I was going to learn something on today's call? So let's talk about what the Happy Hood is. So I alluded to that in the video. So the Happy Hood is a quarterly zine. So a zine is like a fanzine. So it's a small A5, normally illustrated, I guess, unofficial type of media. To give you examples, so this was the first ever issue that we printed over 2 years ago. It's got like lots of writing and artwork in, and then the most recent one, which is double the thickness, and a lot more professional because I know a little bit more about what I'm doing now. And it's got loads of great illustrations, artwork, and you know, content from local people. So the Happy Hood is essentially a community project. So we are set up as a community group. Anyone who wants to get involved can get involved. You don't have to be an official journalist. You don't have to have any writing experience. You don't really need to have any specific skills. You just need to be living in Northampton and want to share a story about what you're doing. It is created by volunteers, so I will tell you a little bit about how it was set up, but just to give you a brief overview, at the moment we have about 120 volunteers who have contributed to the project so far, and with each issue that's published, just over 40 people contribute directly to each issue. So that is in terms of graphic design, in terms of artwork, helping out at events, and also writing and illustrating. It is launched quarterly. I don't think I could cope with doing one more often because it's actually quite a lot of work. But it's a lovely thing that comes out every 3 months and celebrates the 3 months that have just happened. So the issue that's coming out next is issue 10, which will be out next month, and it celebrates pretty much the whole of lockdown, which will be interesting. So we launch each issue and we have an event to go along with that launch. So I didn't want to set up just you know, another magazine that people read in isolation and put down and then that was it. What the point of the project was to bring people together as well. So we have a physical face-to-face launch with each issue that's free to anyone, for anyone to come along. We hold it in different locations across the town. We try and promote local independent businesses, so we've held them in coffee shops, in restaurants and bars, but also in charities as well. So a local youth charity has a lovely outside space which we used last summer for one of our launch events, and the idea is that we're inviting the community into a space that perhaps they don't use all the time, and bring people together with interactive you know, things that you can get involved with. There'll be music, there'll be performance, but also the opportunity to talk to each other and normally eat cake because we like that. So you know, there's always cake involved. And with that launch event, people do connect on, you know, a really intrinsic level. They're there because they want to buy a copy of the zine and they want to find out what the good stuff's happening in our town, but also because they want to find out, you know, who are the people behind this creation and what is going on locally. So it's a really good opportunity to showcase and to link people in that way. So we do sell it, it's not free, and the reason that we have chosen that model is because we didn't want to have advertising within the zine. There are lots of local publications that are free, that come through the door, that have a few you know, little spots of highlights about what's happening locally, but most of it is selling, and we didn't want that. We wanted to spotlight and highlight and promote all of the great stuff that was happening across the town. So we've got loads of space to talk about the charities, the community groups, the schools and colleges, the individuals and the businesses who are adding something lovely to our community. So we sell it. It's £2.50 per issue, and people can subscribe online and get it posted through their door, and they can also go to local independent businesses and buy directly from there. It's been difficult during lockdown because obviously all our stockists are closed. So we have been selling mostly online, but we're delighted that they're starting to open up again, and that people can go into, for example, a coffee shop and buy a bit of cake and, you know, have a coffee and buy one of the copies of the zine. I will talk about how it's funded, so we'll get to that, because I wish sales could just fund it alone, and hopefully one day it will. But yeah, we'll just pause on that and come back to it. The point of the zine very much is to celebrate good news. So what we saw locally in the local media is that you know, there were lots of stories being told, but they weren't necessarily all of the celebratory stories. They were stories that you know, about dirty streets, about shops closing, you know, about negative decisions that councils have made, all of that kind of narrative. And it's interestingly, it seemed at that time to just be very heavily weighted towards the negative. So that's really why we set it up. So let me talk about how it started then. So it actually started because of Eden. So I'm going to give Eden all the credit. I'm most delighted there. So Eden communities hold camps throughout the year that community activists can go along to for free, to network, to learn from each other, and have a lovely weekend in Eden. So I was lucky enough to go along to an Eden camp, and I was asked to bring with me something that inspires me. So we had to bring an item. And at the time I bought the Happy newspaper with me. I don't know if anybody else actually gets the Happy newspaper, but it's set up by a girl called Emily Coxhead, and she again decided she didn't want to hear just bad news and created something that celebrates good news on a global level. So I took along my Happy newspaper, and I sat down in my group and I talked about it, and I said, oh, how great it was, and it showed me that people are doing great things all over the place, and it's inspired me to want to get involved in my community. And I just started doing some voluntary work, and I wanted to find out a bit more about what I could do. So I spent a lovely weekend at Eden. I learned lots from people, and everyone throughout the weekend kept saying to me, you're so passionate about this Happy newspaper, why don't you do one for your own town? And of course at the time I was like, no, that's a ridiculous idea. Why would anyone ever do that? And kind of put it to the back of my mind. But it was a seed that was definitely planted, excuse the pun, but in Eden. It took me towards the Big Lunch. So I don't know if anyone else has heard of Big Lunch, but this is an Eden initiative alongside partners at the National Lottery. But the idea is the Big Lunch brings people together. So at Eden Camp, it very much it inspired me to take part in the Big Lunch. I didn't know any of my neighbours, and I didn't know where to start, which was half the reason about why I thought, well, I could never set up a local Happy News type thing, because I don't know anyone, and what would I write about, and how does this work, and I couldn't do it on my own. So anyway, I decided, I came back from Eden Project, and I was motivated, and I thought, right, that's it. I'm going to stop moaning about the lack of community, and I'm going to put myself out there and see if my street wants to hold a Big Lunch. But it was actually, I woke up in the morning the day after I got back from Eden, and the news had broken about the Manchester Arena attacks. And obviously that was devastating, and there had been quite a few terrorist attacks, but this one, I don't know, it just felt really hard. And I thought to myself, well, who's going to care about a party? There is no point in doing a Big Lunch at this stage. You know, let's just put that to the back of my mind. And then it was by the end of the day where I had seen the positive news, and I had seen and heard the good news stories. You know, I'd heard about the taxi drivers who were rallying around to support people. I had seen that local Manchester people were offering up their home for anyone that needed to come and stay. You know, the NHS staff, the first responders, just everyone doing good things. And again, it was just another kind of reinforcement about why positive news is important. So I thought, no, okay, you know, let's not just ignore the idea of community building. Actually, it's at times like this when we really need to bring people together. So I got my felt tip pens out and some paper, and I hand wrote some letters, and I posted it through the doors of my neighbours, and I ran back home and hid behind the sofa thinking that they were going to think I was a weirdo. Luckily they didn't, and within about half an hour I had people knocking on my door and waving the letter at me and saying, this is a great idea, we'd love to get together and do a big lunch. So that was 4 years ago. So we set up a big lunch, and the neighbours came together, and it was it didn't start as a glorious sunny day. It was very rainy and very windy. In fact, we had to hold down the gazebo for fear of it blowing away. But we persevered, and we got to know each other, and the sun came out and the kids were playing in the street, and it was just a glorious, beautiful day. And it made me realise how easy it is to actually connect with people if you just put yourself out there. One of my neighbours, Kez, who's lived on the street for, I'm going to say 14, 15 years now, he said to me, I'm so glad you did this, because I wouldn't have been able to, but we just needed somebody to do it. So that was lovely, and it really gave me the confidence to start building connections. So not only did I think, right, this is really easy, I just thought, right, I should do this more. So I started talking to more people and connecting, and I ended up you know, working at a co-working space and meeting loads of people through there, and I met somebody who had a very similar idea to me about the town, that it was being, you know, our community was only ever portrayed negatively, and we were kind of sick of it. So we had an idea. We decided, after I'd met a bunch of people, and I'd seen all of the great work that people were doing in the town to make it what it is, I thought, yeah, there's enough here, there's a lot here to celebrate, and I've kind of built up this network, I know some more people now, so let's do it. So with that, me and my pal and my next door neighbour, who I met through the big lunch, set up the Happy Hood. We had no idea what we were doing. So we had never done a community zine or anything before. We had no funding. We had absolutely no idea, but we just did it. So we had the idea. We booked a launch party before we'd even started working on the zine. And 6 weeks later, we launched the first issue, which is here, and I'm still very proud of it. So we had this launch event, we invited lots of people to come along. Some of the people we knew, some we didn't. We reached out to the council, we reached out to organisations, community groups, friends, family, whoever we could get there, we hustled. And loads of people turned up, and really, they loved the idea. There was still some cynicism about why good news is important, but they loved it, and people kind of were excited by it initially. So we didn't think that we would do any more than maybe 1 or 2 issues, because we didn't think we had enough news, frankly. So we're now launching issue 10 next month. So it just goes to show that there wasn't enough good news. So the reality became that we had published, we'd done it. And we started selling these zines, and it was very small scale to begin with, but you know, and it is still considered a small scale publication, but its impact has been huge already. Issue 10, like I say, launches next month. Next month, it's July. God, we're nearly there. Can you tell I haven't slept because I've been working on it so much? And I can't believe we're in issue 10, and the fact that we're launching an issue about good news in the middle of a global pandemic and some of the worst atrocities that we've seen across the world just goes to show how important it is and how timely it is to make sure that we keep that balance and ensure that we are celebrating all of the small acts of kindness that are happening around us all the time. So what's the point of this thing? Like, why should we share good news? Well, I've touched on it a little bit, but I mean, Why on earth not, for a start? Like, why wouldn't we? I think what we are used to seeing in news, especially, is bad news. And I think as human beings, we are, conditioned to look for danger to protect ourselves. And that's something that we've always done. And there's nothing wrong with that, because we want to make sure that we are staying away from any potential danger. So we are intrigued by bad news. We do want to know what's happening around us, because we want to be cautious and we want to make sure that we're protected and that our families are protected. However, it does bring then an imbalance and a kind of skewed version of the world that we know actually isn't true, and that there is a lot of good, and that there are people everywhere who are helping each other and supporting each other. So yeah, my question would be, why on earth not? It's really important to celebrate the good stuff. And I know that especially in my town, but I think we could say this of all towns and villages and cities across the UK, is that there are the kind of unsung heroes everywhere. And we actually celebrate an unsung hero in every issue. But pretty much everyone we write about is an unsung hero. It's really important to thank those people, because we don't often do that. The people who are doing things that wouldn't be considered newsworthy. One of my favourite stories actually came from, I think, the first or the second issue, was of a 9-year-old girl called Jessica, schoolgirl locally, who was doing a school project and had watched Blue Planet and seen, learned all about plastic in the sea and how damaging that could be. And as a 9-year-old, she decided she wanted to do something about it. So she created a campaign called Bertie Bottle, and had this little illustrated character of a single-use plastic bottle that she then took to businesses, with the help of her mum, obviously, and said, can we encourage you to recycle, and will you start litter picking locally? People like Jessica wouldn't necessarily make the news, or she might be like a nice, happy, good news story right at the end, like, oh, we're just going to leave you on a happy note. But actually, it's people like Jessica that I want to see more of. Like, Jessica's a hero, and the fact that she's 9 years old and cares about the planet and is doing something about it meant for me, do you know what? Why shouldn't we celebrate you? We should be doing that. So yeah, celebrating the good in your community, and you can make it like hyper local as well. So I mean, this scene that we create is about our town, so we don't really go beyond our town, but we have had lots of interest from other villages and towns outside of Northampton saying, oh, can you feature us? We do every now and again, but we like to keep it town focused. It's been such an amazing opportunity for me, especially, to learn from other people. The fact that we've had, like I say, 120 people contribute to this project so far over the last 2 and a bit years has meant that I've been able to meet people that I would never have come in contact with before. It's given me a reason, an excuse, much like the Big Lunch does. It gives you a reason or an excuse to reach out to people and to talk to them and to connect with them. And it's been fantastic, because, there's something so important about learning from people and in ways that you wouldn't normally, and spreading good news has been that opportunity to do that. And it also dispels fear. So like I said at the start, we are conditioned to kind of look for things that might harm us, and with that it can bring up some fear about communities, about I didn't know who was living next door to me before I did the Big Lunch. Like, I wouldn't have a clue, and that can be scary, especially when you live on your own and you don't know who you can reach out to, and you don't know if people are nice and friendly. And now I know everyone on my street, and I can knock on my neighbour's door when there's a spider and I'm scared. They can come and help me. But it really, the spreading of the good news is about making sure that there's balance and celebrating those, actions and stories that wouldn't be celebrated in mainstream media. It's also very much about creating connections. So like I mentioned, we do have a launch event with each of our new issues. It's really important that we do that, because we want to bring people together physically. Now, we weren't able to do that for our last launch, so we did a digital version. It was a little bit, you know, cringy again, seeing your face on screen, but I invited some of the contributors, and we did much like this, like a Zoom call that is now on our YouTube page that people can watch, and it gave people the opportunity to find out about some of the contributors, their artwork, their interests, why they take part in the project. And so that was just as valuable as a face-to-face meet. And it gives everyone the opportunity to see in real life the stories come to life. So it's not just reading about Jessica, it's meeting Jessica. You know, it's not just reading about a charity who support older people, or a food bank, or you know, somebody who's left little painted stones around the park that you can pick up. It's literally meeting these people and thinking, cool, do you know what, if they can do something positive, then I can. It kind of, you know, takes away that fear of the lack of power that we feel that we have when we are inspired by people around us. And also, importantly, the zine is a platform for underrepresented voices. What I noticed in local media, and you know, I know a lot of the journalists, and they're on the whole nice people, but they are, you know, they were and are a certain type of people. They're a certain demographic, and they're telling stories about the community that perhaps they aren't part of. So, you know, you'd find a lot, for me locally, you know, a lot of middle-aged, middle-class, white, normally men, telling stories about communities that they weren't part of, whereas this platform has given people the chance to tell their own stories in their own way for their own reasons. And I think that's super important, that, you know, with this specifically, I'm giving the opportunity for people to talk who wouldn't normally talk. You know, people aren't journalists that write for the Happy Hood. They're ordinary people. You know, they're teachers, or they're artists, or you know, they're engineers. They're anyone and everyone, and we want to see ourselves reflected in the news, and I don't think we always see that. And so with something like a community project, it really gives people the opportunity to see themselves reflected and to tell their stories, you know, on their own terms. So let's get to the good bit then. How do you spread your own good news? So I'm not suggesting that everyone on this call should set up their own Happy Hood, although that would be a world that I would want to live in. You know, it may be that actually this is, you know, the idea of doing something like this is just too much. Why would I do that? But there are lots of different ways that you can spread your own good news. I mean, we have our own way of storytelling, and I think that's really important to remember, is that you know, every time you're talking to a friend or a neighbour or a colleague, or, you know, relaying information, what information are you relaying? I mean, at the moment, obviously, we're in the middle of a global pandemic, so we're talking about that a lot, of course, and that's very important. But there are so many other things that we could be you know, telling our stories about, even if it's something as simple as, you know, a connection with a neighbour that you never had before. You know, when you've been stood on your doorstep clapping for carers, and you've noticed that actually there's a family across the way with kids the same age that you didn't know about. You know, it's that type of storytelling, and making sure that that you see the value in that. You know, storytelling doesn't have to be about, like I say, the big kind of negative headline grabbing stories that that we're provided with day to day. The really simple day-to-day stuff is just as valuable and fun and uplifting and positive to hear about. So, how to spread your own good news? Think about your platform and your audience. So what do you have at your fingertips, at your disposal, to help spread that good news and that energy? It may be that you are part of a like, I don't know, maybe you run a Cubs group, or maybe you do some book groups, or maybe you just at your job, you know, you work with lots of people that you could talk to. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as telling people something good that you've heard that day, or asking them for what they've experienced that has been positive. It may be that you've got an online presence, so, you know, like a digital platform that you can spread good news via. Things like Instagram are fantastic for engaging with good news because it's a picture and it's a short kind of caption. So, you know, do you have any social media platforms that you could use? It's free, so why not? And thinking about who are you reaching out to. So when you're telling good stories, or when you're creating or asking for good news stories from people, how are you going to actually reach out to them? So I didn't want the Happy Hood to be just my voice, and certainly the first issue was completely written by me because I didn't have anyone else to write it. But this, the new issue that's coming out, I think I wrote maybe one short article and obviously the notes from the editor, but that's it. Everything else is everyone else's voice, and I think that's really important as well. It's about giving space to people who wouldn't normally have the opportunity to share stories wider than their social circle or their, you know, specific section of community. So think about your audience and who you're trying to reach out to. Get people involved. So don't try and do anything on your own. You know, the point of doing something like this and spreading good news in this format, or like I say, digitally, or literally just telling people about good stuff that's happening, is about connecting and bringing people together. So, you know, reach out to your friends and family and see who wants to get involved. They're a good place to start, and you'd be surprised how many people want to take part. And really, for me, it's been the people that I thought wouldn't have any interest in this kind of thing at all that have been like, yeah, that's really cool, let me get on board. So find out, you know, find a little crew to help you initially. If you don't know anyone or you don't have anyone to talk to, then this is the perfect excuse and the perfect reason to start, even with your street or your block of flats, or, you know, your town, you know, whatever you want to do, just reach out to some people. And that can be as simple as scribbling on a bit of paper with felt tip pens, just saying. So funding wise, so like I say, I set up the Happy Hood with £0, like none, and we paid for it all out of pocket. So the printing of it was really the only expense that we had, because the graphic designer who was working on it, who was my next door neighbour, was volunteering, and everyone else, you know, was volunteering on it. So the only real cost for us was the printing. But had I known then what I know now, there are lots of places that you can apply for grant funding for. My particular borough council have been fairly supportive of this, because obviously it really helps them. You know, anything that's spreading good news really helps councils right now across the UK. And they generally have small pots of money that can be allocated per councillor. So they'll have like a community fund that they can allocate out, or there will be sort of slightly larger central funds that you can apply for. Now, yes, it's very competitive at the moment, because there are lots of charities and organisations who need support for COVID related activities. But this is a proven concept, so if you need anyone to back up any of your funding applications, please let me know, because I can demonstrate that this works, that it's happening, that it's needed, that it's valuable. I would also suggest, so not only going to your local councils, but also you're probably likely to have a local community foundation. So this is where normally wealthy organisations and individuals give money that they want to donate to local organisations to a community foundation, who then allocate it out. So Google community foundation and see what you can find. There's also the likes of the lottery. Now at the moment, and I'm not sure if this has changed, but certainly the last time I spoke to a local funder, they were just funding really specific COVID related projects like food banks, etc. That might have changed though, so it's definitely worth contacting the Lottery Awards for All. We were lucky enough to get £10,000 worth of funding from the lottery, which really helped us. So it helped us set up a website, it helped us with all the insurances and stuff for our events that we were doing. It helped us pay for some of the time for the current graphic designer. So it really took the pressure off us financially. we do sell our zines, so all of the money that is raised from sales goes straight back into the project. So it means that we can run free events that people can come to, and we can put on refreshments, and there is no barrier in that sense to people coming along, and we've kept it really cost effective. So we launched with this zine, which was 18 pages, and it was £2.50, and the most recent issue was 34 pages, I think. Yeah, and it's still £2.50. So we future-proofed the price, and we don't plan to put the price up ever if we can avoid it. Also, in terms of funding wise, there are loads of different little pots that you can apply to, everything from your local co-op through to your bank and your building society all seem to have community focused pots of money that really help with their corporate social responsibility. So do give it a Google and have a look, and I know that I'm sure that there will be some links on the Eden Project's website, which Mo's nodding, and I'm sure she'll say at the end. So what I would say is, don't let money put you off. If you want to do something that is spreading good news and you feel like you need some funding for it, it is of value. So funders do see it as a valuable activity. It ticks a lot of boxes. Our project specifically ticks a box around mental health and well-being, because it is a printed zine, and there is a lot of artwork in there, and it is covering local good news stories. So that's quite a strong cornerstone of why we're able to get funding. But it also plays into community safety and hometown pride, and just lots of different kind of tick boxes that funders like to see. Have fun with it. That's what I would say. The whole reason that I set this up is because it was something that I was hugely passionate about, and I wanted to do something fun, and it has been so much fun. It is stressful, don't get me wrong, and it is a lot of work, but it has been super fun to get involved with different types of people, and to help spread these stories that I would never have known about if I hadn't actually been actively looking for them. So I'm just conscious of time, and I want to give people the opportunity to ask questions. So I do have oh God, look at my face. I have another short video to show you, which I don't think is going to play on this. So I'm going to stop sharing here and just hop over and hop out of this. Bear with me a second. There we go. So I'm just going to share my screen. There we go. So hopefully you should see that now. Yes, good. So another quick short video, and then time for questions.
Positive news. There's enough of it to go around in the county, according to the Happy Hood. The magazine, started by Laura Graham and Paige Taylor, is holding a party to launch its 5th issue.
So the Happy Hood started a year ago today, and the idea came from the fact that we were sick of hearing bad news about Northampton, and we wanted to celebrate and spotlight some of the great people doing good things in the town. We felt like they weren't getting the thanks and the promotion that they needed, so we created our own platform. There are so many people doing so much great stuff, and they've been doing it for so long that actually we're falling over them.
The magazine has many supporters who do their own good deeds in and around the county.
The Happy Post Lady is a free service where I write letters on behalf of other people. They contact me and say they'd like a letter writing or a card writing for any reason. It could be anything, and using all my stamps and stationery and stickers, I write on their behalf, and then they can either have their name mentioned or not. I can just sign it from the Happy Post Lady.
Another supporter is the Hometown Project.
So I run Hometown Projects, which is sort of a business that was designed to sort of flip the narrative from negative to positive within Northamptonshire. I run the NN card, which is a loyalty scheme for businesses in Northamptonshire, and then I just get involved in everything I can around the town that's good. I'm involved because I met Laura last year. We just sort of got together, realised that we were all trying to do something, us and other people, to sort of benefit the community. And Laura just tried to get me involved to write about some of the things that I'm doing and some of the things that I've got involved with around the community.
so much of the news can be perceived as being negative, and there's no reason that it has to be that way. I just think it's what people are used to. They're used to the idea of a news bulletin being generally bad stuff, and then there's a final story which is all happy and nice. Why can't it just be the other way around, or just be all positive? And so when you buy and read something like Happy Hood, you're supporting a really good cause, but you're also hopefully changing your mindset about what is news, and that can only be a good thing.
The future's looking bright and happy, obviously. With the funding that we've got, it means that we can build a really good website, we can promote ourselves much wider, we can run writing and illustrating workshops to make sure that other members of the community have a voice and can get involved with the magazine, so it's looking really positive.
Kaylee Polachek, UON News.
There we go. So, I can see all your faces again now. Okay, everyone's still awake, hopefully, that's good. Cool, so I just wanted to open it up to questions. I think the chat's been going quite busy, so yeah.
Just before we open it to new questions, I have some that have come in while you're speaking, Laura, that I'm just going to make sure. So, I'm sorry, I can't remember who asked me this, or who asked this, but is the Happy Hood also online, or is it only in print?
Really good question. So the Happy Hood is a printed zine only. So, and we've made this decision very deliberately. The point of the zine is that people step away from their screens and their phones and actually look at something tangible. We know that actually that activates different parts of the brain and is really good for mental health and well-being. But it doesn't mean that we don't have a digital presence. So we do have Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, a website, YouTube. You know, we do reach out and can be, you know, interacted with in those channels. But the zine itself and the good news is all contained in a printed format.
And I have one personal question that I am particularly interested in finding out in, because there are so many options to get things printed out there. And I've had things printed before, and it can be a bit overwhelming sometimes to kind of choose and decide. I don't want you to have, you know, you don't need to say exactly, but how did you come to a decision on who was going to print, and do you use the same printer every time? Would you feel comfortable in telling us who that is and recommending them?
Yeah. Okay, so we wanted really to keep the printing of it local. So we did use, for the first 2 issues, we used a local printer, but actually it became really expensive because they've got overheads and stuff. So I think for maybe 3 issues, we then went online with a printer who were really competitive, called Instant Print. And they you know, they did a good job. They sent us extra copies. They were speedy. I think you can get it back within like 48 hours, but that wasn't really what we wanted to do long term. So luckily we found a local printer who gave us great rates because we're a community project, and it's actually Call Quick, which is a national brand, but they are, each one of them are local, kind of like local franchises. So so we are supporting local people in their sort of business endeavors, and they've been fantastic and really supportive, and they stock the zine as well, so people whenever they're going in the shop can buy copies. So what I would say is kind of talk to your local printers and explain what you're doing and how you're doing it. And I mean, now it's grown in popularity, and we've been on the local, you know, TV news and the radio a few times and in the paper and stuff. Now everyone's like, oh, we'll help you now. So actually it's been really good to have, you know, we know that we've got lots of different options should, you know, Call Quick no longer be there. There's loads of people that want to help. So yeah, that's how we do it.
Nice. It's nice to sort of hear that journey, because I know that, yeah, you can start off thinking, oh, I really want to keep everything local. It's nice to hear, you know, you can change and make it work. And I think one of the things I try and remind people is, yeah, the idea you can start quite small and centered with big dreams of where you would like to go to. And then when you go to funders, you can say, well, we're doing it this way now. We're using Instant Print or whatever right now, but we would like to pair with so-and-so. And if you can show that journey, I think that is a really great thing to add into things like funding applications.
Yeah.
Someone's recommending Big Sky Print. Nice. Sorry, I won't take up all the question times. I get to go in first because I had questions that people had asked. So I'll open the floor out. Does anyone have any specific questions for Laura regarding all this cool stuff? Oh, I'll get to ask more questions then, because I have questions. How about,
Maybe I covered everything.
yeah, you totally did. But I think one of the things I was super, really keen on for community projects, and one of the questions I often get asked, is about how to get on the local news. How do you get your project on the news? It's tricky, it's hard, especially if you're a volunteer group and you maybe don't have those connections. How did you guys go about getting on the news?
Yeah, I think it was a bit by fluke, to be honest. We, do you know what, we did a pretty good job of just making ourselves known, which sounds a bit obnoxious, but actually it really wasn't. So what happened was there was a town centre meeting. So what we did was, when we set this up, we wanted to have our finger on the pulse of what was happening in our town. So we knew that we had to get out there more, go to groups, go to meetings, meet people. And there was a particular meeting that was held about the town centre, and it was by the Business Improvement District, who kind of help with the town centre, growing the town centre businesses. So I went along to that, and it was a packed room full of people. And it was in a sort of local hotel, kind of big conference room. I'm not even sure I was meant to be there, but I managed to get in somehow anyway. And I stood up and I asked a question specifically about how the council and the town were going to, engage people properly. And I mentioned that, that I was doing the Happy Hood. And then that kind of seemed to spark the imagination of the local journalists. And yeah, I just met a few people. The local BBC Radio Northampton have been very supportive. I met a couple of the journos from there, and when they see that there's somebody who is really passionate about what they're doing and can talk, can you tell, then they just kept inviting me on, and from there we got some BBC Anglia TV slots, and even the local newspaper, who we'd actually set up this zine in direct response to because they were so negative, actually featured, when we got our lottery grant funding, that was a story and stuff. So now I've got to a point where I kind of know everyone on first names terms, and I've got their phone numbers and their email addresses, and I can send out any kind of details or loose press releases. But I would say to community groups, do send out press releases. It's not that hard. You don't have to write a story. You just have to be really super factual about what you're doing. But if it's engaging enough, then they will pick it up because they're desperate for content. I'd say especially your local radio stations and stuff. We've got a couple of really good community radio stations that are, like I say, crying out for content. So just be cheeky and ask.
I would also second that. I was surprised when I spoke to somebody from a community radio in Aberdeen, and they said, we just the more that people bring them, the easier their job is. So they're super, super keen. And if you're not super confident doing it yourself, I think they're just as keen to hear from maybe the people who volunteer for the project, or someone who is involved in it, not right up at the top of the person that's running it, just as much. So you can kind of make those connections and get someone else to do the actual chatty bit, because I know not everybody is as keen. I was absolutely breaking it when I went on the radio. So
I love radio because you can't see anyone. It's stuff like this that's a bit daunting, because you can see your face and you can see everyone else. Yeah, but yeah, definitely use your local media though. It's been a really good vehicle to get the message spread. And even it's weird. I was sat in the park maybe about a week ago, doing a socially distanced picnic with my friend, and I had somebody shout over to me, and she was like, "Are you the Happy Hood?" I was like, "Yes, I am." This is a bit weird. So it's really important, the more you get your name and your face out there, the better your project will be received. You kind of have to put your ego aside, because I really don't, as much as it looks like I want to talk about stuff all the time, it is a bit but yeah, you become the face of it, and if people can connect with you as a human, then they'll connect with your project.
So we've got a couple more questions. I'm conscious of time, so we're just gonna have a look. So I think it's Gillo asks, what feedback do you get on your content, and how does that influence what you put in the zine?
Oh, that's a good question. Do you know what? We don't specifically get feedback necessarily on individual stories, but we do when we're at our launch events. We try and pick up some anecdotal like feedback, especially for the funding side of it. I've always got that in my head. So I do kind of ask people what stories have they enjoyed, and you know, which ones have been their favourite and stuff like that. So we get feedback when I ask for it specifically. And really, in terms of the content and what goes in there, I try and make sure that it's fair. So we're giving, you know, lots of different organisations a chance, and that we're not kind of, you know, doing stories all the time about the same organisations. I want to make sure that there's lots of different interests, so I try and think about our 85-year-old readers, because we do have quite a few of them, and what they'd be interested in, as well as, you know, people in schools and colleges, what they would want to read about. So I try and think about what would be of interest. But other than that, I kind of leave it up to the voice of the public. Like if you throw a story my way, then I'll take it. You know, it's that kind of thing.
Cool. Yeah, totally. I think, you know, you don't always need to get feedback, but it's good to ask, you know, and then have those conversations. I always think the one-to-one works really well. So let's have a look. Where can I find one of the magazines? Anne-Marie asks. So I'm guessing, can we buy them online, I wondered?
Yes, yes, you can.
Say that. Sorry.
Yes, absolutely. So if you go to thehappyhood.com, there is a page on there where you can buy individual issues. So if you just want to test it out and see what on earth I'm talking about, then you can buy an issue, or you can subscribe for a year, and it will be posted through your door every quarter. So yeah, if you're not in the Northampton or the Midlands area, don't let that stop you. And I have been told that actually it's a really good read even if you're not local. So I've had quite a few people who wouldn't know some of the organisations that we're talking about, but it just, you know, I've had feedback that it's fun anyway. So yes, thehappyhood.com, go and check it out.
And I saw we've got just a few minutes left. I'm just going to let you guys know. So we do a number of these sessions. This is part of a big series that Eden has been doing in response to us not being able to go out and gather people and do the events that we usually do out, like in person. So whether you've been to another one before or not, if you have a look on the Eden Project Community's website, but also on our Facebook page, there's a whole list of these different talks by different people, and we're also looking for a little bit of feedback. So if you've got a couple of minutes just to let us know what you thought about the session, that'd be great. The link is in the chat, but I don't want to take up too much time for that because I want to make sure everyone has. We may not get through all the questions if we can't do, but I'm going to share the notes, and I'm sure you can contact Laura. I'm putting you on the spot.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Other questions, and I think that's something, you know, what's really amazing about things like this is the idea is there, and I think to really note that the concept has been proven, as Laura said. If this is something that your community would really benefit from, then hopefully you can kind of take this as the first spark of inspiration. Sorry, I'm reading and trying to talk at the same time. So I'll answer one that I think I can answer myself. But Kirsty, do you want to ask your questions quite long? Do you feel comfortable just asking Laura in, like, by speaking, or would you
real life
read it out? You can just unmute yourself, hopefully.
Oh, it's just the question at the end. It's just like tips on how to get going and what content is appropriate in your zine, because I'm hoping to start a similar project or revamp a local community project newsletter. So it's got more content, really.
Cool. Yeah, so you want some tips to get started?
Yeah. Okay,
my tip, good question, and my top tip is ask people for content. So literally, you know, and Facebook pages, Facebook groups are really good. If you, at any time, if you put out a call for like, oh, I'm wanting to share some news about charities, they will jump on that, because like it's any free kind of PR that they can get, they love. So yeah, I'd use all of your networks, ask around, ask friends and family, just literally invite stories in, because that just makes your life so much easier. I started off having to search for all of the stories, which is slightly harder, but now I don't have to do any searching, they come to me. So yeah, just ask and get and see what people want to hear about, because in terms of what's appropriate, it's whatever reflects your community. So, you know, if there's a story about a litter picking crew, or you know, an artist who's done a big mural saying thanks to the NHS, or whatever it might be, just let your community speak for itself, basically.